In this video, I'm going to show you the 7 things that you need to know to be able to sew by hand. Hey friends, welcome to Adulting with Esther, the show where we talk about the things that you don't learn in school. I'm your host, Esther, and today we're going to be talking about the 7 things that you need to know to be able to sew by hand. If you're new here, welcome. Consider subscribing down below so that you can get alerts when we post our videos on Tuesdays, and go ahead and hit that like button if you're getting value out of this video so far. In our 7 steps today, we'll be talking about the tools you need, how to thread a needle and knot it off, some basic stitches you need to know to be able to actually sew, how to hem something, how to close up a hole, how to attach a button, how to patch something, and how to bind off so that your hard work doesn't come undone. If at any point during the video you want to check out the description below, you'll be able to find links to things like the products I'm using here, products I use in this video, and links to other resources to help you out. Okay, let's get started. The first thing you're going to need is a pair of quality scissors. These are Fiskars. They are a great middle of the road product. They're not elite for the best sewers, and they're not terrible. They give you a nice clean cut. Only use them for material or thread, otherwise you will dull the blade and they won't be as good anymore. You'll also need some thread. You'll want whatever matches the clothing that you're sewing. The other thing you're going to need is needles. They typically come in a variety pack. Make sure that when you purchase them, you get ones that are made for hand sewing, which means the eye of the needle is at the back end, whereas the ones for machines have the eye at the front end. So make sure you get hand sewing needles. They typically come in a variety pack with a bunch of different sizes. I wouldn't be too picky about the size needle you use. Work with whatever is comfortable. The bigger the needle though, the harder it is to get through fabric. It is harder to get bigger needles through tight knit fabric, and sometimes the smaller needles break in really durable fabric like jeans. Test a few out, they're not that expensive. And for when we're patching 2 pieces of material together or hemming, you're going to need some pins. If you don't have pins like this, you can always use safety pins. They won't work as well, but they'll do just fine in a pinch. For the patching we'll be doing, I have some of these wonderful iron-on patches that you iron on to a piece of clothing first and then you sew around the edge. These are great for when that space in between your legs and your jeans starts to wear out. Use this to reinforce them and you can get another year or 2 out of your favorite pair of jeans. Okay, let's get our thread. The way I learned to measure my thread, a lot of people say 20 inches, but what I've learned is a good rule of thumb is measure the length of one of your arms. Just extend it all the way and then use your really sharp scissors to give it a little snip. If you're using cheap scissors, you'll notice that the end gets really frayed, which will make it difficult when you're trying to thread your needle later. A trick for threading your needle is, it's kind of gross, give it a little spit, lick it a little bit, and that will pull those threads together. When you have those frayed edges, it makes it harder to put. It's like putting a square thing inside a small hole. I don't know, you know what I mean. That's the first trick you can do. The second trick you can do is if you have beeswax, which is the stuff that's in like Burt's Bees chapstick. You probably could use chapstick, I don't know. Might smell like strawberries. Anyways, you can use that to pull the threads together. If you lick it too much, it eventually gets kind of limp and it's hard to go through the threaded, through the needle. And you find your little hole and you aim and you go and it's in. Now, if you don't have luck the first time, that's okay. It takes most people like 20 times to thread a needle. But one other really neat trick is get a piece of paper and cut a very, very, very thin slit. I'm talking like 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, very teensy tiny. The width of that tiny piece of paper needs to be small enough that it'll fit through the eye of the needle. So practice and see if that'll fit through. I can see that this will fit through the eye of my needle now. What I'm gonna do here, if you've ever made those fun bracelets out of gum wrappers, this is kind of like that. Just gonna fold it in half. I'm going to stick the folded end, the end that if I push it, it would make like a circle. And I'm gonna put that through the eye of the needle. This should be easier because it's got a little more structure to it. It's firmer than just a limp piece of thread. And so now you got your paper through. Now that your paper is through the eye of the needle, you can open up that hole. It's much bigger and it's gonna be a lot easier for me to aim with my thread. And I'm gonna take my thread and put it through the big paper hole that I made. See how fast and easy that was? I'm gonna pull it through a little bit so I don't make any mistakes and lose it. And then I pull the paper and the thread through the needle. And I pull it until the other end of it comes through. And now I have successfully threaded my needle with a piece of paper. There's also that cute little tool that has a dime on it, that one. That works well too, but if you didn't buy a sewing kit, you won't have it. So now to knot the thread on our needle. We put our 2 ends of thread together and we wrap it in an overhand loop. We take this end of thread and we go through the loop about 3 times. The more times you go through the loop with that end of thread, it's going to make a bigger knot. And the bigger knot, the less chance of it falling through your material. Now I'm going to hold the end of that thread with my right hand and I'm going to push it down with my left. So that makes a really messy knot. And I pull it down to the end and voila. And that's it. Let's talk stitches. Different stitches have different purposes. Some are for temporary holds, some are for hemming, and others are for a really strong hold, kind of like you would get if you were using a sewing machine. We're gonna start with that one. It's called a back stitch. We start our project by inserting the needle from the rear to the front. This will allow the knot to be hidden when we finish our project. We're going to space our stitches out about 1/4 inch apart. Go ahead and insert your needle through and pull your string taut. Flip your material over and insert your needle in between the 2 stitch locations. This reoccurring circular pattern with your string allows it to closely mimic that of a sewing machine and makes your stitch much more secure. Now the next stitch, you're going to insert it 1.5 stitches further. This is completing the remainder of that first stitch and then going 1 stitch more. Insert it in between in the back and then pull through again. Continue this pattern for the remainder of your length of material and finish by putting the needle through to the back so that when you tie off, your knot will be hidden. Now we're going to try a running stitch or a basting stitch. Start it the same way by inserting your needle from the back so that your knot is hidden. Space your stitches out accordingly. A running stitch has shorter stitches than a basting stitch. Unlike our last stitch, instead of going back into the middle of the 2, we're going to continue further on. This will make an alternating pattern appear on our material. It'll also make it so it's not as secure. The basting stitch is most often used in place of pins when you don't have them or you need to hold together a large section of fabric. You can use the running stitch to scrunch your fabric and join it together. Continue this across your material and end it the same way by inserting your needle through to the back so that your knot is hidden. If you're getting value out of this, go ahead and hit that like button. Our third stitch brings us to point number 3, how to hem something. We're gonna do this using the whip stitch, turning your pants inside out and cuffing the leg to the desired length. Hold the material in place by inserting pins and weaving them back and forth to hold the material in place. Insert pins all the way around the cuff so that the material doesn't get jostled while you're sewing and you end up having an uneven leg. Still working from the inside out, insert your thread all the way through both layers of your cuffed and the main pant. Make sure that you don't sew through both legs of your pants because then your pants will get sewn together. Working from the inside, bring your stitch and needle back out. You've completed 1 stitch. Continue this process around your entire pant leg, going through both layers of the cuff and putting the needle through from the outside to the inside to finish the stitch. Your final stitch should end with the needle coming to the inside of the pant leg where you can knot it off without showing the knot on the outside of the pants. It's important that the thread you use on your material is of the same color so that your hem doesn't show on the outside of your pants. Thing number 4, what to do when you have a hole in your clothing. How do you fix that? So we've got this hole in our material now. Instead of throwing it away or paying $10 for someone at the dry cleaners to do it, you can do it yourself. Insert your needle from the back of your project close to where the hole is, but not within the frayed strings. Insert it from the back and cross over to the other side of the hole, avoiding the frayed area and hitting the material that is strong enough to hold a stitch. Continue working your way from front to back all the way up. Keep your stitches about 1/4 inch apart. Once you've made it all the way to the top of the hole, continue the same type of stitch all the way back down. This locks your stitch in and makes sure that it stays really secure and that your hole doesn't continue to ravel as you wear this item of clothing. Insert your needle from the front to the back for your final stitch so that you can tie it off with your knot remaining hidden on the inside of your clothing. Number 5, how to put a button on when it falls off. When you're sewing on a button, the first thing you need to recognize is that there is a front and a back to your button. The button front with the lip on it, or the edge, is the front. The smooth side is the back. Start off by inserting your needle through the back of your piece and pulling it up through the front. Insert your needle into one of the 4 corners from the back of your button. We'll attach the button by inserting the needle down back into the fabric, into the hole that is diagonally across from the hole you just went in. Pull through, and we'll repeat this step 4 times total. Make sure you finish your 4th time by going through to the back. Now, come up through the button from the back by going into one of the other 2 empty holes. We're going to repeat the process we just did by crossing over diagonally into the other empty hole. Continue this diagonal stitch 4 times for this part of the button. Once you finish those 4, make sure you end by continuing your needle through to the back of your project. Now we're going to do something called the shank. Insert your needle from the back through to the front of the material, but not through the button itself. Keep your needle close to the stitches that are already there. Now, using your left hand to hold the button in place, wrap the string around the base of the button where your thread is 4 times total. After your 4th wraparound, insert the needle back into the material and come out through the back. This shank makes it easier for you to put the button through the hole in your clothing. Number 6, how to patch a hole, like a big hole or something that's wearing out like the crotch of your jeans. When you notice your pants are starting to change color and they're wearing thin, or that the material is starting to pill, it's better to put a patch before it breaks through to an actual hole, because then whatever material you use to patch it is going to show through. Choose a patch that's about the same size as the thinning area on your pants, or even a little bit larger. When you're using these iron-on patches, you are going to need an iron. If you don't have an ironing board, a trick that I do is I use a bath towel, fold it up nice and thick, and then I can use any surface to iron on, like my cheap IKEA table. Begin by warming up the area that you're going to adhere the patch to and iron it on. You want to use a preheated iron for this. You want to apply even pressure, moving the iron around so as to get good adhesion throughout the entire patch and not burn your pants. Patch usually tends to start rolling up on the edges, so we're going to sew around the edge using a whip stitch. Oh, and remember to use a color thread that matches the color of your pants. Still working with your pants inside out, pick a corner, any corner, and start your first stitch, using a whip stitch around the entire perimeter of the patch. If you run out of thread, simply tie off your project, rethread your needle, knot it off, and start again. Continue all the way around until you have whip stitched the entire edge. Okay, we finished the entire patch on here. And if we turn it inside out, we can see that using black thread, this is barely minimal, especially because the patch is going to be between your legs. And finally, number 7, what we've all been waiting for, how to tie off your projects so they don't get unraveled. I go through as if I was gonna make a stitch. Got a big loop here. And I go through the loop once and twice, and I give it a good yank. And I do it one more time. I'm gonna make a stitch, got a big loop, and I go through it once, twice. And I pull nice and tight and give it a good clip. Okay, we did it. We made it through all of this, and way to go. Good for you. If you got value out of this video, smash that like button and hit the subscribe button so you know when we post our next videos. If you need any of these materials like needles, thread, any of that, you can check the description down below for links to the products so that you can get them for yourself and become your own self-sufficient adult that knows how to sew. We talked about how to thread a needle, how to knot it off, and all the tools you need to be a successful sewer. We talked about the different stitches that you're able to make and how to hem something. We talked about how to close a hole and how you can sew a button on your favorite shirt when it busts off. And then we even talked about how to patch a big hole and bind off your stitches so that they don't ravel up and all your hard work goes to waste. I hope you had a great time learning how to sew today. I know I had a great time working with you. Good luck, and let me know what you're sewing down below in the comments so that we can celebrate your victories together. Bye guys. If you're new to here, you'll want whatever matches, oops. Finally, number 7 that we've all been waiting, and just give it a little cut. Uh-oh. Hi, cat. Done.